Welcome to the ClickZ webinar, High Performance Local SEO for Enterprise Brands Simplified. Search engine optimization is one of the most important channels for marketers to understand, as 71% of consumer journeys now start with a search engine. 82% of mobile searches end with near me, so local SEO has even more relevance for businesses that need to make sure that consumers find them first. But as search engine marketing becomes more commonplace, it's harder to stand out. So what should brands be doing to ensure that they stay at the top of the search engine result page? In this webinar, we'll hear from two search engine optimization experts on the techniques, tools, and best practices to optimize your online presence. My name is Tim Flagg, and I'm the host of the ClickZ podcast and webinars, and I'm going to be talking you through today's webinar. I'll be introducing our special guests in just a moment, but first, some quick housekeeping points. You should be able to see at the bottom the Q&A box, and this is where you can put your questions to our panel, and we'll be leaving some time at the end of the webinar for those questions to our experts. Now, if for whatever reason your call does drop out, don't worry, just go back to the email that you received and click on that same link, and you should be able to come right back in to the webinar. The webinar will last about 60 minutes, and the last 10 or so minutes will be for questions and answers. And also the webinar will be available afterwards for you to share with your colleagues. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our two guest speakers today. We're joined by Tyler Ludwig, who's the Director of Enterprise Solutions for Local Search, SaaS Technology and Digital Marketing Strategy at Rio SEO. Tyler specializes in delivering strategic direction to enterprise brands on local search, SaaS technology, and digital marketing strategy. With experience in omnichannel marketing, Tyler enjoys being a trusted resource for enterprise brands across marketing, product management, and sales, helping them utilize the most effective channels available today. I'm also delighted to welcome Colin Seymour, who's the Director of Business Development at Rio SEO and also a search marketing expert. Colin works with multiple location brands to help maximize their local search initiatives. He provides his insight and experience in digital strategy, search engine optimization, and SaaS technology to enterprise clients looking for help optimizing their online brand presence across channels. So I'd like to welcome you both to the ClickZ webinar. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Tyler to take it from here. So Tyler, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate it. So really, when it comes down to this webinar, what we want to talk about is really, the comprehensive toolbook for multi-location brands. It's not easy. It's kind of a big pain in the butt for most clients, regardless of how large you are. But there's a lot of good opportunities to be in the forefront, especially if you are doing something today or aren't doing anything today as well. So what we want to do is really cover the kind of key points of what you want to do from a location listing management perspective, as well as, can we do things from an organic SEO, as well as what does reputation really mean to the brand as well. So a couple things within there is, we know that consumers are looking for online brands in any capacity, primarily on mobile, is really creating a new buying decision, not only for service area type brands, for brick and mortar, but then also for others that don't actually have a presence or do service areas as well. So as we jump in, is really looking at technology and the human element. So as humans, or just as consumers, we know that we look at our devices all the time. We are not only on social media sites like Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, but we're also looking for what do we do tomorrow. I think about this when I'm looking with my wife for a good brunch spot for the next day or two, or for the weekend, is I want to know and I want to actually find businesses near me that actually have what I'm looking for. So when we think about this, is really looking at online search versus mobile. Mobile is number one. We all know that. From a high standpoint, there's probably 85% of all searches come through mobile today, primarily on Google. But then we're also looking at maps and applications. So Google Maps app on my iPhone is probably my number one resource. If I'm looking at maybe some recommendations with friends, I might go to Foursquare. I might go to Swarm. I might be the only person on the planet that I know of that actually uses Foursquare and Swarm. But it is a valuable resource because there is tips and recommendations within there. So there's a lot of consumer-generated or community content that applies to how I make my decision next to where I want to go and where I want to go in. Secondly is also check-ins. So Google as well as Google Maps as well as other systems get smarter as you start checking into locations, either implicitly or explicitly. So what I mean by that is either you check in by pushing the check-in button on, say, Facebook or even on Google as of now. They start applying updates as you've been here before, and we want to look at the volume of people in real time as far as how many people or how busy is that location itself. And that could also sway your decision on where you go. But more importantly is making sure that you're found. So from a long-term, long tail, as we call it in SEO, is making sure that you have that information that is correct, updated at any given time, as well as things like operating hours or holiday hours or anything like that. And then we also have voice. So voice search has probably been one of the most key pieces of information that I've heard about or just questions in general from all large brands is, how do we optimize against that? So now we're going to start looking at, more natural language within our body content, as well as natural language against, what we do for FAQs or questions and answers within Google My Business themselves. So as we talk about that, I know I mentioned, Google is king, but what are the other services within there? Google Home, Yelp, your Foursquares, your Facebooks, everything outside of what we would typically see today. But then there's also that extended network of different devices like Yellow Pages, City Search, and Super Pages beyond that. So looking at just overall stats, a lot of this you can find on the web, but it's a good way to tell the story, right? 33% of all mobile searches are related to a location, which we know, right? You open up your phone and you say search near me or I want restaurants. Even without saying the search near me type of query, it does locate you to that specific city or postal code, and then what is nearby you, right? And then you start doing filters. Is it highly rated? Is it lowly rated? Is it a operating or open now? Is it, price sensitive type of approach? But then how, when we think of the 76%, the people that search on smartphones actually visit a location near me. So if you're not there, you're missing the boat. If you are there, we want to make sure it's correct and up to date as much as possible, as well as all the attributes that are associated with that. Are you wheelchair accessible? Do you have a public restroom? All of that stuff is definitely important to help you from a ranking factor, but then also making sure that for different queries, you get shown up or presented within the search results itself.
Perfect. This is Colin Seymour. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. What Tyler and I hear a lot from brands that we speak with on the phone is what impacts my business presence, right? What are the management things that I can do to ensure that our locations show up and show up with the correct information across Google, Bing, Facebook, etc., right? So how we do that is making sure that locations are showing up with the correct information and ranking for non-branded keyword searches, not just on Google, but on Bing, on Yelp, anywhere a consumer would be doing a search. How we manage that, and a lot of brands that we speak with today manage locations on Google and say, hey, Colin, hey, Tyler, we have 2,000 locations, and we manage our location presence on Google. Well, what about Bing or Apple Maps, Foursquare, TomTom, some of those in-car GPS systems that consumers are utilizing when they're looking for a business around them as they're driving around? Making sure that user updates and suggestions, what we mean by that is on Google, as we all know, consumers can unfortunately suggest an edit on a Google local listing. And Google may actually take that information that that consumer has suggested and change the brand's local listing information from an hours of operation, maybe the address, any of that local information within that listing could get changed on the fly on Google's cadence. So there's automation tools from a third-party perspective that you can utilize, but there's always going to be a manual touch that is needed from a local listing perspective, where brands have to ensure that locations are showing up, are making sure that any time a consumer may have suggested an edit that Google actually validated, that brand is quickly notified so they can go in and correct that local listing information. There are also third-party systems. We also call them data aggregators. And what data aggregators do, they're very important because Google will actually go out and crawl these data aggregators to ensure that the same information a brand gave to Google, they also gave to an info group or a localese and some of those major 4 data aggregators. So we always want to make sure, to Tyler's earlier point, that your information is correct on as many directories as possible, because Google will actually go and crawl some of those directories and ensure that before they update their site, they want to see that that brand gave that same information to Google that they also gave to an info group or a localese. And finally, regarding reviews, we all know consumers look up reviews before they go make a purchase at a business, whether it's online or offline. We want to ensure that brands are quickly responding to reviews, whether a positive or a negative. So Google will see that as well as consumers. I think everyone on the phone can agree that you've looked up reviews, whether it's an oil change company or a grocery store, any of those services that are very relevant to the service or the features that that location offers. Making sure that you guys are responding to reviews in a timely manner is crucial to your business.
Yeah, and I think on top of that too is categorizing the reviews themselves. So either if you have a team today or not, is really looking at, is it based on service? Is it based on cleanliness? Is it based on time to delivery? You know, maybe if it's buy online, pick up in store, there might be that approach where I went to the store, it was supposed to be ready, and it wasn't, right? I'm going to be pissed off, and I'm actually going to leave a bad review or even a poor review for that brand. But from a brand perspective is where Colin's talking about responding to positive and negative reviews. Positive reviews are definitely important. Yes, the person is happy, they're good, they love the service, they love the brand. Showing that you care from a brand perspective is also important. They will look at, did you respond from the brand to a positive or a negative review? Negative review is probably going to be delivering somebody to the customer service team or maybe disaster recovery, whoever it is within the different organization. But want to make sure that you have that touch point with those customers as well. So we did a couple case studies. So since we work with over probably about close to 500 million records today, is really looking at what is the impact of search. So Google My Business, as well as Bing and others, is the impact of making sure that you have correct information across those different sites, because they are going to show up more prominently across them. So from a Google My Business listings perspective, we saw that there was a 60-to-1 click ratio from website links from that listing itself within the map pack. And that is before somebody actually goes off into the specific knowledge card, but actually coming through that, kind of first pop-up that you guys would see today. Also, we found that with other, investigative reporting that has been gone out, is the ability to push in, is looking at searches that are related to people might ask, or people, looking for more information around a business or based on a service, is, 62% of Google searches resulted in no-click search. So Google is the new homepage. We've said that a lot with current clients as well as prospects that we're talking to or companies, is looking at, if you have as much information as possible on Google, that is going to drive a lot of value to your brand as well. So next step, start to finish, and then it always keeps moving. So we know Google, just in this local search space itself. I remember probably 4 or 5 years ago talking about having just Google My Business listings. Then we started talking about organic search. Now we're talking about reviews, ratings, and voice search. So it all starts with your business plan. And that comes down to a source of truth for your business. I know not every company has it all buttoned up with a CRM or CMS system that they have in place, but you want to consolidate all of that information, whether it might be coming from multiple internal business units with the company itself, but a single source of truth. And what I mean by that is creating a consolidated, easy-to-use management system that not only you or franchisees or service areas or agencies might be able to use to push out more data across multiple services. And what that entails is taking your core data, which is your name, address, phone number, maybe a website, maybe some attributes, maybe some photos and links as well, but then also enhancing that with additional attributes. So what I mean by that is when I think of Google, they like to associate, do you have a wheelchair accessible location? Do you have a family restroom? Do you have all these other pieces that you can apply to that Google My Business listing or to your local organic pages as well to provide a customized or enhanced local experience to your consumer? And with that comes syncing data between your system and whatever vendor you choose, right? Is making sure that, when somebody makes an update in your system, that it does go out to that particular vendor to push out that data across the different listing management search engines or even to the pages themselves. Is it social media feeds? Is it reviews? Is it looking at those different attributes that I mentioned before? What that has to do is making sure that you have that by sync between the two systems so that everything is kept in check and something doesn't get left off the table. And lastly is enabling your end users.
From that standpoint, a lot of brands that we work with are franchise-based businesses, right? They may have 4,000, 5,000 locations with 100 or 500, 1,000 franchisees. A lot of the brands that we work with have a couple of thousand locations and may even have 800 franchisees. What those franchisees want to be able to do with corporate governance and approvals, of course, is log into the dashboard and maybe see the 1 or the 5 or 10 locations that they own and are invested in the business and actually manage that location data. That franchisee is probably going to know their location data better than anyone, especially at corporate, whether they need to close a location early, hours of operation, etc. So what businesses do and brands do, like Rio SEO, is making sure from a vendor standpoint, you guys are giving franchisees logins to the dashboard where you can actually track governance, history tracking to ensure that no one is changing location data incorrectly. And of course, with certain approvals, now the franchisees are invested in their business and location data reporting, etc.
Yeah, I think on top of that too is making sure that it's also a crowdsourcing tool. So, how do we collect as a brand with 2,000 locations or even 100 locations? How do we collect information from the individual store owner, store manager, or feet on the ground? We can deliver a platform, or you should have a platform that allows you to collect that data in any format. I want to drag and drop an image on there. It might be approved, might not be approved, but it definitely gives you that ability, and that's the thing, is making sure that we can enhance or update your database as frequently as possible with that crowdsourcing type of approach. So where, why, and what? The ecosystem. We talked about this a little bit before. Is really consumers are looking on every different platform. I search very differently than my dad does. My dad is in the old school system with white pages and yellow pages, perfectly fine. But I'm on the Google and Apple's and so forth. So what we suggest is claim and manage wherever possible. And that comes back to the point of not only taking in the major factors or major search engines, but then also looking to that extended network, which is your, flowing through the data aggregators. They buy and sell data to different systems, as well as different networks buy and sell data or buy data from them at different intervals within there. So we want to make sure that, if you have your grandma that goes into yellowpages.com and wants to find your business, you want to make sure that you're there, but it's also a validation factor for the likes of, say, Google or Bing or whoever, is making sure that all those checks and balances are in place so that you have a robust experience, and then also track that for as referring traffic from those sites as well. And what we talked about too is your data is unique, and you should be too. No business is exactly the same. The only thing that you have in common is that you have multiple locations or more than one location, right? So now we want to think about, what does each location do separately? What do they do from a different attribute perspective? So I'm obviously going to sell different products in New York than I would in San Diego, depending on locality, weather events, whatever it may be. We want to make sure that you get pushed out into as many places as possible with that information.
And I think tracking that information is huge as well, right? So a lot of brands that we speak with manage Google My Business insights where they can pull and really track that consumer journey. We want to show a brand how many impressions they're receiving on a monthly or a daily volume, but also what that consumer is doing once they find that local listing and your information. Are they clicking to your website and maybe trying to find specific information about that location? Are they rendering driving directions? If so, let's make sure that map pin is exactly where our business is on Google, right? A lot of brands that we speak with who maybe have locations in a mall or a strip mall, shopping center, etc., tell us that, Colin, Tyler, a lot of our locations have the map pin in the wrong spot. So we're getting a ton of calls at our location, or maybe even reviews of, hey, I parked on this side of the mall to go to this store. I walked in, it's on the other side of the mall. It's a very bad user experience, right? So making sure that you can track that to see where that consumer, once they're finding your data, what are they now doing with that data? Are they calling that location? Are they rendering driving directions to go make a purchase at that location? Or are they going to the website to find out more information?
And then it all comes down to the reporting. So that was a good, alluding to this particular, factor and point here is, are you there? What have you done for me lately? Ask any provider that you're using today I want to use your platform to push out as many places as possible, but I also want to see the return on investment. And that's big for any brand, large or small, billions of dollars, if not, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. Does not matter. If you're paying for a service, much like you would buy a car, is I want the most efficient car and I want to have the best price for that. But I also want to know that there is service on the back end to make sure that I can, fully function throughout my day. So when I think about that is accuracy on networks. What are you measuring? Do you care about the yellow pages or the super pages or the hot frogs? More importantly, it's probably looking at Google and the Bings and the Apples. Are you there? Are you not there? And then how timely is my updates being pushed out? When I think about that too is also local and organic ranking factors. So if you're present, how do people actually find you? So based on non-branded keyword terms, because most times with branded keyword terms, you're going to show up first or second or third. But for non-branded keyword terms, for the highly competitive insights or services that you offer, do you have availability without using, 3 systems, 4 systems, wherever, is getting those analytics or those ranking factors by location. And that's the biggest thing. Every location is different. Every market is different. Some people search based on different keyword terms. So you want to make sure that you have a platform that is capable and flexible to do different keywords by location, or just in general as if somebody was in that city searching for a non-branded keyword term like, say, catering, Mexican food. I want water delivery, whatever it may be. You want to make sure that you show up, but then also who is competing with you in that specific market too. And that allows you to really optimize your organic, but then also a paid search site. So now we can start looking at competitors, and if I'm ranked number 4, 5, or 6, perfect. Maybe I want to spend some ad dollars there or look at hyperlocal content marketing for that. But if you're ranked 1, 2, or 3, why pay for it? You know, you're throwing away money because people like to, or consumers love to click on ads, and that just costs you a click. So we look at that, and then also sentiment. So this comes back into the reviews portion of kind of local search is, you know, how are you performing? You might have locations that have a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, and then you have other locations which are killing it with a 4 and a 5-star. So really digging down into each specific aspect or each location really will help you from a toolkit or long-term local search strategy as well.
And I think jumping back to the ranking factors piece, I really think we're all consumers at the end of the day, right? We all make purchases, whether they are groceries, gas for our cars, etc. If we do a non-branded search such as supermarket near me, and we're probably most likely going to go to one of the companies that showed up in the top 3 or top 5, maybe top 10 on Google. If you guys aren't ranking for those non-branded terms, but your competitors are, where is that consumer more likely to spend their money? At the end of the day, from a local and organic perspective, how you can increase that is by optimizing the local listings for those non-branded keyword terms, as Tyler alluded to. By location, if there are certain services that a location in California offers that maybe a location in Florida or New York doesn't. Making sure that those locations are optimized from a local and organic standpoint to ensure that when a competitor doesn't know what's around them or have a certain bias towards a brand, they just want to go make a purchase, whether it's a gas station, a supermarket near me, any of those non-branded terms. We need to ensure you show up and then show up with the correct information.
Yeah, and it also helps you from a store within a store type of model too. If you think about gas stations, they have typically it's, you know, the gas station runs the pumps, the fuel, but then they have a convenience store. So now you can start optimizing around, you know, a convenience store near me or fast food, you know, fast and grab food. All of those different keywords that you can, you know, really optimize around a landing page, but then also from a listing itself definitely helps. So the future. So now we're jumping in the DeLorean and we are moving forward, right? So thinking about that is coming down to it's a game of local dating. So we talk about Bumble, we talk about Tinder, and all of that good stuff that really happens is what do we measure next? So from the next step in local search, it's really around reputation. It's very complicated. It's not fun. And usually you need a team or at least advisors to do that as well as a response and then measuring the impact. So what we want to do is cover measuring your reputation. Are you viewing this today? Are you pulling in information from different sites, sources? And that could be based on every vertical. So you could think of apartments.com, or if you think of a ZocDoc, or if you think of a Vitals or a HealthGrades. Depending on the different industry, there's going to be different consumer feedback based on the services or the, you know, kind of offerings that you have today. What we do suggest is, you know, creating a team. This is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not easy. We have clients or no clients that have 5,000 reviews per month. How do I manage that? There also might be where you have 10 reviews per month. It all depends on the size of the business as well as how many consumers go there. Is building a response team. I'm not saying you have to have 10 people, 20 people, 50 people. It's really dedicating a service to facilitate the consumer experience within there, which is the next step. And that really comes down to, you know, what matters. Is it service? Is it cleanliness? Is it, you know, the manager really pissed me off at one time? Is it, you know, measuring the impact? Right? So now I want to look at, as my reviews increase, as my response from consumers increase, or as I respond from the brand back to that consumer, does that go up as well? So now you can start correlating not only the review response and review sentiment, against ranking factors or against local traffic through web analytics. All of that stuff really, makes a big impact, and it's kind of that full circle of local search itself. And when we think about it, obviously stats don't lie. It's just thinking about, when consumers look at businesses, right? So on an average of 10 online reviews, people look at that and, want to have more reviews to associate that with a business before they buy, right? And say they trust more online reviews as personal recommendations versus just listening to a friend. There's always going to be that case, but somebody will still do their research after the fact as well. So, as far as the future goes as well, is the next step in local listings. So when we think about that is your name, address, phone number, like I talked about before, is really a cornerstone of that business or, from a search or service area type business as well. But it's what can you do to enhance that? There's all this real estate that lives in Google My Business knowledge cards as well as Bing cards, as well as others like Yelp or Facebook, is how much information can you really put in there to entice a user to do that or to move or make an action to engage with your brand, because they're going to go there first. They're not going to go to your website. Some might. It's probably going to be less than 10%. But if we think about, Google being the new homepage, what can you do to really enhance that? Business descriptions, more photos, updating photos, even if you have 10, 20, 50, whatever it may be, you're going to have those user-suggested updates or photos that come in to the max as well. But we want to make sure that you as a brand are controlling the experience from start to finish. And that really comes down to not only the photos and business description, but also Google Posts, right? Posts are great. It is a great marketing effort. It's a great marketing platform to get right in the front of the consumer to really make a purchase based on a specific thing, which there's, multiple different types. There's events, there's promotions, there is long-standing content, maybe blog posts. It's kind of like the next age of Google Plus within local search itself.
So takeaways, obviously location data, right? We say it all the time to brands. We know managing location information is not fun for anyone at any brand, especially with hundreds or thousands of locations. Going into Google My Business and making edits to hours of operation or an address and closing a location, opening a new one. Not the best part of your job. We obviously understand that, right? So in the local search space, not only doing that on Google, but as the major other directories as well, but also making sure that you guys can focus on other SEO and marketing initiatives. We know a lot of brands, you wear a lot of hats within the company, managing SEO, paid, PPC, display advertising, etc. So from a digital marketing perspective, making sure that there is somehow you can have a brand enhance your location data across all of the major directories and search engines wherever a consumer would be doing a search.
And then it's just thinking about long-term goals, right? I've talked with multiple companies that haven't done anything yet, right? And what I say to them is now's the time to start. It's basically you get on, you wake up every day, you take a shower, you put your pants on, put on your shirt, and you're ready for the day. You want to go into business looking as good as possible. Same thing goes with a business in each way, is foundation of location management data, so making sure that you have a system that is your source of truth. How do you impact that? So pushing out through listings, managing it across different networks. But then how do you report on that? If I go into work looking like a slob, I'm going to get called out and probably come home and, okay, maybe next day I should probably do better. So when we want to think about that is looking at ROI and what are those metrics that matter most to you? Are they driving an impact to your business? And there's multiple different ways to think about that too, is online to offline. as well as just location management itself, but online to offline. Multiple different ways that you can connect POS data with your location rankings, as well as listing management, paid search. How does that impact your brand? Is it making an impact for, from a listing perspective? But then just overall, is it e-com, right? Are we looking at conversions, sales, whatever it may be for the brand itself?
And we all know that Google will come out with a new algorithm or a new update, every 6 or 9 months, right? A penguin update, a pigeon update, a raccoon update, as they have in the past. Making sure that you as a brand know what those changes may be, right? A couple years ago when Google went from showing 5 results in the local map pack to 3, a lot of brands panicked, right? Because they were showing up 4th or 5th on Google, and now you have to click, more results to have their location show up. Anytime, knowing that these changes are coming and utilizing those changes and being, productive and instead of reacting to that change and trying to scramble and make sure its locations are optimized within Google's new algorithms, making sure you know of these changes before they're coming to enhance your data.
Yeah, being proactive.
Great. Well, thanks very much, both Colin and Tyler. That's been awesome to have such a great toolkit that you've obviously put together from your many years of experience and you've been able to share with us today. So I'd like to thank you for all those insights. Now, we open up to the audience now. It's your opportunity to bring together some questions and put your questions to Colin and Tyler. So I'll give you the chance to put those in just a moment. A reminder, at the bottom of the screen, there's the Q&A tab. Click on that and you should be able to open up to put some questions in there. While we're waiting for those to come in, I just wonder whether I could ask a question about voice. It's one of those things that is endlessly fascinating, and it's there's that Gartner statistic that 50% of all search is going to be voice by 2020. I'm not sure whether I believe that, given that's only a year away. But anyway, what would you say are the most important factors, and do we know enough about the criteria that Google is using when it's choosing what answer it returns for each of those voice queries?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for that is how you mark up your pages, right? So schema.org is a great resource. It's highly complicated, and there's thousands of ways to mark up a page. When you think of voice search, what we talked about before is it has to be conversational, right? So typically, landing page copy used to be, we are a pet store located in San Diego, offering, aquarium and vaccinations, whatever it may be. People are looking for more detailed queries, search, especially within voice. I talk to my phone versus typing in my phone very differently. So I think from a company standpoint, it really comes down to the markup that you have on a landing page or just on your website in general. I think FAQs is a really good piece of information that you can definitely add within there. But from a local side, it's you want to showcase the services or areas of opportunity or areas of service that you have, what cities you serve, what services you have in more detail, right? So adding more content definitely does not hurt you. It actually helps you in the long run as long as it's a more conversational type of search approach. Okay, and building upon that theme then about content used to be critical for SEO. And, I've had a number of websites where we've created lots of additional content to rank around keywords or clusters of keywords. Now, I was thinking, what role does local content play in local SEO? Would it be advisable to go out and create lots and lots of local pages based around keyword and URLs which are about that local vicinity? Would that sort of thing help? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you just have to do it in moderation. When you think about having a location page for each location, I highly recommend that. We've been doing that for 12 plus years now. It's definitely driven a lot of impact. What you can do is also, from an SEO perspective, you can only keyword stuff a page without keyword stuffing. As for so many keywords. It's like 2 to 3 non-branded keyword terms as well as your main. But if you do have internal services, so if you think of a home improvement store that has a garden department, you can't necessarily put that on that main page. You could probably put a summary, but it does impact if you have a landing page for that might have different hours, might have different service, call numbers, whatever it may be. But then at least talk about content that is very personalized to that consumer experience as well.
Okay, great. And just actually going back to your earlier slide where you talked about posts, Google Posts, which are, I suppose, a relatively new feature now. What advice would you give to a team who's considering creating content? Because this is a new channel, it's a new content channel for a team. Should they be spending, I don't know, a third, half of their time thinking about the content they're putting into Google Posts now? Or is this more just like of an add-on for content you might already be sharing on social?
It's a great question. And I think really from a Google Post perspective, you want to make it unique to the location as possible. Unfortunately, right now, Google Posts is still a manual effort, right? Throughout their APIs and their functionalities that they continue to build, it'll be an automated for all locations instead of a manual effort by location. But really, at the end of the day, to answer your question with a question is, what is your call to action? And making sure that that call to action is very transparent through that Google Post. Do you want them to go to a page and fill out a lead form, or be driven to a page, or maybe an event or something about a single location? But really make it as unique to the location as possible, and really figure out what is your call to action when making that Google Post.
Okay, yes, it has to be relevant and that be compelling for the user.
And how do you track that as well, right? So within Google Posts, you can actually have tracking parameters on the links themselves as well. So that definitely helps you with, how do you measure that impact of sales or, lead conversions or people showing up to an event?
Yeah, that's a good shout, actually, and it should be highly visible if it's all within the Google ecosystem to be able to track all that customer journey. You mentioned before also review sites and the impact which those can have. And I remember in the past doing some work when it was with brand level keywords and review sites really help with that. But I'm wondering how granular the data is you get, or the reviews you get from review sites. Is it granular enough to really map to local stores and to be able to therefore help with local SEO?
Absolutely. Yeah, it all depends on the site, right? So if you think of just traditional like Glassdoor.com, that's going to be based on the business. But if you think of Google, within Google My Business or Apartments.com or even ZocDoc.com, whatever it may be, is really it's tied down to an individual location. And that's really where you start getting into the fun parts of, figuring out what somebody or what a consumer is actually replying to. And there's a lot of great tools out there, right? So at Real SEO, we can definitely do help with pulling in or aggregating that data, giving you the ability to actually respond to those different sites, but then also using, good old technology today. So natural language processing. So when we think about that is, I want to find all of the consumers or all of the reviews that talk about service or cleanliness or timeliness of staff, whatever it may be. It might be the front staff. If you're thinking of healthcare, it might be the front weight room. If I'm thinking about others, it might be, the manager didn't really help me, or if it's on returns department. Really digging into that will really build out a good, not only consumer sentiment for you, but what do consumers need? And that allows you to really apply new marketing or new business objectives across the board to really help out and drive more sales, as well as overall increasing the user sentiment as well.
Great, thank you. We've got a question here from Bruno, and he said, I have a real estate agency in Spain, but my website is hosted in the US and my customers are in Belgium. Wow, that sounds complicated enough already. My site is a .com one. indicating my office address in Spain with Google My Business will not help, as it will drive Spanish visitors, which is not my target. Do you have any suggestions? A bit of a specific one there, but do you have any advice for Bruno?
Yeah, I think from that is, having the site as a .com doesn't matter. I mean, I would always prefer that or recommend that. Some sites have gone to .io, and with all the new extensions that they have is .questions or whatever it may be. .com is always good. It's making sure that you have language that speaks to each consumer. So if it's in Belgium or if it's in Spain, maybe you want to do Spanish versus something else, right? But from a Google My Business perspective, it should be primarily the same. It's just making sure that the categories and map listings, map pin location is all within there, as well as the attributes and categories as well.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of just drawing things to a close now, I wanted to just get your thoughts on what resources would you recommend or places to go for anyone listening who wants to make sure they're staying up to date on all of the developments within local search? Are there any places you'd recommend?
Absolutely. Yeah, so, Rio SEO, we try and push out as much content as possible. Some either, web tutorials, Q&A, blog articles, industry stats that we can pull through. Definitely a good resource. There's also, good other resources as well, like Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land. Always great to look into specific categories as well. And then on top of that, on June 13th, we're also going to have an Ask the Experts webinar as well that would allow you to actually come in, ask our team, ask our listing management professionals any questions that you have, or even SEO specialists on top of that.
Fantastic. So that's a great opportunity there to learn more and really delve into some of those case studies and examples that you've been sharing throughout today. So I'd like to then wrap things up there and thank Colin and Tyler. It's been really useful to get your detailed insight and hear some great case studies and examples and advice there on how we as marketers can really apply some of these insights to our business. So most importantly, I'd like to thank you, our audience, for joining us today. And as you leave, I'd like to ask you to think about what's the one thing that you're going to take away from today's presentation that you can apply in your business. So join us again soon for the next ClickZ webinar. Until then, bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.